Hey guys, so this is my second appearance on YouTube in not a long space of time. This isn't going to be a long show, about uh, half an hour, 45 minutes, we'll see. What I, the reason why I'm doing it is, first of all, to acknowledge what Gabby's mother said, and then secondly, to acknowledge Gabby herself on the 1 year anniversary of where she was on her van life journey. And so I'm going to be taking you guys through her Instagram, and we're going to be dealing with 13 Instagram posts, all dealing with July. So starting with that one, that's the first one in July, and then going all the way up to the last one in July, which is this one. So 13 Instagram posts in July, and then as you can see, only 4 in August. Quite a sudden downturn, wouldn't you say? Just a quick hi to some of you guys in chat: SMK Valinsky, Pauline Buckles, Roses Are Red, Terry Dean, good to see you again. Um, uh, Ellen Durfner, Sharon Butler, good to see you as well. Lindsay Ali, Scott Spraker. Am I missing anyone? Mel Stiller, good to see all of you guys. If you guys are in America, I hope you guys are staying cool and staying safe. And then also hi to Sharon Tuck. Good to see you here as well. So I'm going to get going. I don't want to spend too much time sort of waffling. This is the tweet that Nicole Schmidt sent. And she said, I don't know who wrote this. By the way, I did actually spend quite a long time Googling the text and just couldn't solve the mystery. So I don't know, do any of you guys know who wrote this? I still don't know myself. Anyway, she says, wow, isn't this the truth? So sorry to all who have to endure this pain and daily struggle. I'm sending you all love, strength, and good vibes as you have done for me. Now, the part to emphasize is that it was sent on July 22nd, right? And it reads as follows. Although the struggle with grief is part of every death, murder is darker than death, and so is the road to surviving and healing in the aftermath. Murder devours innocent lives with a cruelty that is absent of reason, absent of values, and absent of compassion. Murder breaks all the sacred rules, knows no fairness, and can never be undone or compensated. It provokes fear and rage and tempts us to battle it on its terms instead of ours. Murder drives even the most loving and compassionate people to the edge of that fine line that separates our respect for life from our violent potentials. The aftermath of murder takes us straight through hell, where we stand eye to eye with the evil that hides behind human faces, and what we do in the face of that evil defines what lies behind our own face. The aftermath of murder is nothing less than a full blown emotional and spiritual struggle. So, on July 22nd, 1 year and 1 day after this stunning photo, so it's actually after this photo here. I wonder if it's going to allow me to bring it up. No, it's not. So, after this particular photo was put up, where is it now? I think it's not that one, not that one, not that one, that one. So about a year and 1 day after this photo was taken of America's young, America's beautiful, America's innocent daughter, her mother posted a quote about grief and its dark side. And I think just as we remember Gabby today, 1 year later, no doubt Gabby's mom, Gabby's own mother, Nicole, remembers her too. I think Nicole's also been going through Gabby's social media. except I think the difference is for Gabby's mother, there are memories far beyond these few snapshots in time. But think about it in another way. How does one remember a life? How is one supposed to remember a life? And to be honest, I've been thinking about that. I lost a friend in October last year, and I've obviously been thinking about him. I've watched his wife put photos of him on social media and certain messages, and it just makes you wonder, how is one supposed to remember a life today? We're supposed to remember somebody with words, with songs, with tweets. How is one supposed to remember life in the face of death? And so obviously this is how um, Nicole remembers Gabby within this context, that there is pain and a daily struggle, that she is aware of the importance of love within that context, strength within that context, good vibes within that context, reaching out within this whole sort of situation. So so I think if this paragraph resonates with Nicole, it also resonates with me. I don't know if it's resonated with you guys. Let's have a look at what some of you people are saying. With me. I don't know if it resonates. Not sure why that happened. I think I need to mute site. Okay, there we go. Let's just have a look at some of your comments. So can I ask you guys, did this resonate with you when you read it? Have you guys seen this tweet before? SM Kobylinski says, very poignant. SM Kobylinski says, it has very much resonated with me. Yeah, same here. So death is difficult. You know, that is something that Nicole obviously knows about from the inside. And she's acknowledging a year later, even a year later, death is difficult. Death is difficult and dark enough just on its own terms. But then murder is this, as it says here, let me just bring it up. Murder is darker than death. I don't know why this is still open. I'll just close that and close that. Sorry about that. Murder is darker than death, and so is the road to surviving and healing in the aftermath. If murder is darker than death, then I think suicide is darker still. And so in terms of this case, the sting of truth in the murder of Gabby Petito isn't just about a shining light that's no longer there, right? It's not just about Gabby no longer being there. It's something worse than that. It's the cruelty of the act itself, compounded by the ongoing cruelty in the aftermath. And there's that word, cruelty. Compounded by the ongoing cruelty in the aftermath. And what are we supposed to make of that? This particular message, again, which is kind of mysterious, like who wrote it, it talks about evil. We stand eye to eye with evil that hides behind human faces. And what is there any evil behind our face? What we do in the face of that evil, that defines us, doesn't it? And so I think one's got to ask, again, what do we make of death within the situation? And it's kind of the issue that we face with true crime. Something happens, and what are we supposed to do with that? The fact that evil exists and evil persists, what are we supposed to do with that? And how does one battle darkness on our terms? So over here it says, So murder breaks all the sacred rules. Murder provokes fear and rage and tempts us to battle on its terms instead of ours. What do you think that means? What does it mean if we're battling murder on its terms? And so I think the answer to that is, and I have thought about it, I think one's got to ask, how does one deal with death in general, right? And I think we deal with death and darkness on our own terms by making ourselves the center of it, right? I mean, that is by definition how you deal with something on your own terms. You make yourself the center of that issue, right? And so, in terms of death, you make yourself the center of this problem of death. And you say, I'm not going to be pulled off center by the vastness of death. So you can say, I deal with death by appreciating life. That is how you make yourself the center of it. I decide, okay, death exists. How I'm going to deal with it is I'm going to appreciate life. And you do that however you do that. You will decide what it means to appreciate life. It might be living very large. It might be traveling right around the world for weeks on end or months on end or even years on end. That might be how you express appreciating life. Or it might be just taking a few steps in a different direction, literally stopping to smell the flowers, literally not being in such a race to get from one point to another, literally stopping, literally feeling, absorbing, being in the moment, literally getting out of routines and things and sort of being alive and being present, right? So it might be a small change that you bring about where you are mindful and you're present, or it might be a complete radical transformation where your life is nothing like the life you had. You decide what it means to say, I appreciate life, or life is precious. So, put simply, we deal with the meaninglessness of death by adding meaning to our lives. And it's not always in the face of someone being murdered or in the face of suicide that we can find meaning. It can simply be, I'm alive and I feel like I need to have a more meaningful life. You don't have to have some kind of dramatic event taking place, but that is often what's the word? It's often a driving force that uh, puts you in a kind of existential crisis. But I'm just saying you don't need to have an existential crisis to question your existence in a meaningful, necessary, and intelligent way. Just add meaning. I must say, I think that would make a very good true crime rocket science T-shirt, don't you think? Just add meaning. I think that would make quite a cool shirt. Kindness Cake says, yes, a very painful, lonely path on one's own terms. For me, many years of widowhood to even come to terms. Shame. Sorry to hear that. I hope it's going well with you on your journey. I hope you are journeying better on your road. Okay, so thanks a lot, Ellen. So let's just go a little bit further. This idea of adding meaning, that after all is the lesson in death, for better or worse. For the living, death is a living hell, an emotional and spiritual struggle, which is touched on there, a full-blown emotional and spiritual struggle. But the mere fact that we are alive makes us heroes, right? Just think about that. You know, this idea of appreciating life doesn't. You sort of wonder, how do you appreciate life? How do you like being alive when there's so much trials and tribulations, right? But our emotional and spiritual struggle edifies us. Our grief edifies us. To grieve means that we we found someone's presence in our lives valuable and meaningful and important. And so if we sad that they're no longer there, that edifies us, that makes our connection to that person explicit and meaningful and important, right? It shows that we are good people. It shows that although that person is no longer here with us, something remains, something lingers, right? I can't remember which movie it was. I think it was Star Wars, where somebody said, I think it was Kylo Ren or one of those characters said that Princess Leia is gone. And then Han Solo says, she's not gone. Someone's not just gone. Something lingers on. And if we grieve for someone, you may think of grief as something that's unpleasant and behind closed doors and not an enjoyable experience. But grief is actually a good thing. It it proves that someone isn't just gone, that they linger with us, and that they, their lives meant something, and that's something. So the other side of it is we are still here, we're still alive, and the fact that we are alive, the fact that any person or even any creature is alive means it's a hero of its own kind. So think about what we're talking about here in the vast infinity of space and darkness, the fact that we exist at all, however small or insignificant we are, in the vast scale of the universe, the fact that something can point at us, or we can point at ourselves and say, there is someone, isn't small heroism. And in this respect, I want to show you an image by a photographer. His name is Hooghart Malone. Look at this beautiful image of a creature that exists on the substrate of our planet. And although it is in the situation of being overwhelmed by the size of the sand dune, you nevertheless get the sense that this animal is also quite awesome, right? Do you get what I'm saying? That, and I've written it here, man's mightiness doesn't come from how large he is, but how such a tiny creature can be capable of such courage. To step onto a rocket and then onto a desolate moon utterly alone, to climb 9 kilometers into the air on the world's highest mountain, to do all manner of things that no other creature can on our world, talk, laugh, and sing, right? Paul Jacob says, I have Gabby's photograph on my phone. I especially like the one that was taken in my hometown of Ogden, Utah, with the monarch butterfly. I think are you talking about the very last one, that one? I'm pretty sure it is that one. Pauline Buckle says, I saw a bumper sticker once that said, grief natural, suffering optional. And for some reason it helped. Well, that's a really great statement, Pauline. Thanks for sharing that. Bridget says, death is huge. It is one of our biggest fears. They do linger in our memories. Life is so precious. In Buddhist philosophy, it is such a precious gift, and being born human, a great gift indeed. Yvette Kelly says, thank you for working so hard. Thanks a lot, Yvette. Okay, so I just want to finish up with what I'm dealing with here. So in Gabby and Brian's lives, the way they dealt with, and make no mistake, it was their way of dealing in a way with death. The pandemic was happening in 2021. And in the midst of that, it was like, are we going to spend the summer sitting at home? What are we going to do with our lives in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of this death, in the midst of this threat, right? And the answer was, we're going to translate, transplant, transport ourselves onto the largest possible scale. We're going to live as big as we can in terms of moving across the landscape, but yet be modest about it in terms of the whole less is more. And you often actually see less is more as a hashtag coming up in Gabby's social media. So so that is how Gabby and Brian found meaning in terms of their lives, in terms of what does it mean to appreciate life as a young person? How do you express that in the best way? And the answer was, well, you get into a van and you embark on an adventure of love and life across the grand canvas of America's national parks. And you might be looking at that as a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, 60, 70, 80, and you might say, why couldn't I do that? Is this only an adventure a young person can have? Well, why can't I be young at heart at whatever age, right? Isn't that a good idea for me to? You don't necessarily have to get into a van, but explore the grand canvas of America, whether it's the national parks or museums or whatever it is, or maybe some other countries. But the bottom line is that their heroic journey, Brian and Gabby's heroic journey, was to risk life in the midst of a pandemic, to live large and to claim their voice, only to lose it. See, that's the sort of nasty potential side of this, is in this effort to get your fairy tale, to get this meaningful experience, you've got to take a risk. And you might get the reward of everything that you want: joy, happiness, and expanded sort of consciousness, and increased, what's the word, sort of capacity as a person on this planet, kind of thing. But you could also lose everything by accident or by design. That is part of the risk of stepping out. Of course, by not stepping out, you, in a way, die 1,000 deaths anyway. All the things that you don't do, right? So this is why I think the Gabby Petito case resonates so much, because it's in this sense of the magnificence of life within the vast magnificence of the canvas, that having it extinguished. So this whole idea of it's almost like a rocket shooting up, through the sky, maybe over Cape Canaveral. This bold, roaring ambition, this bold step, and then the next thing it explodes, and that's not supposed to happen. It's this climber climbing Mount Everest, and he is strong and he's got courage and he is not going to be turned back. And then something goes wrong and he actually dies on the mountain. It's not something that's supposed to happen. In the midst of this grabbing of life, in the midst of this trying to appreciate life and become alive, you actually lose your life permanently. You want to be alive and only to have your life snatched from you. That's shocking. It's something we are seemingly unprepared for. And this is what we presented with in Gabby Petito. And then we ask ourselves, what are we supposed to do with this? What do we make of this as the people on the other side, the people who are still here? And so I think when you expand this to true crime in general, you see that there's a contradiction in true crime and perhaps in life in general, in that we only tend to understand it, and perhaps then only glimpses of it, in the rearview mirror. So when life is actually happening, we're lost. Do you find that is true? Have you found that is true for you? We only tend to understand our lives in the rearview mirror, but when our lives are actually taking place in real time, we're lost. We don't know it's happening. Why is that? And then when death is happening, we're even more hopelessly lost. Why is that? And then I think the same reason that we get consumed by life, devoured by it, and I think my study of Van Gogh, quite a painful, meticulous study, you realize to what extent emotions play a role in the grandness of life and also the tragedy of life, that emotions rob us of certain things that should have happened to us. But by the same token, emotions draw us often into the world. We may be intimidated or shy or anxious or scared, but our emotions attract us to someone or push us towards someone or something, and that gets us into the world and gets us participating. So emotion, just that one thing, can cost us dearly, and by the same token, emotion can be richly rewarding. It can give you this treasure trove of feeling. And I don't just mean, like, it's not just feeling, it's this experience of being alive. That's what we're all chasing. This authentic experience of I'm alive right now. And in that sense, I'm a hero. I chose this moment, and this moment is me, right? So emotion is what gives life its resonance, its melody, but getting caught up in the emotion is also how we lose track of what's happening as well. Emotion is a drug, and drugs awaken emotions. Think about that as well. That while emotions are almost like the food of life, they also can be a kind of a poison. They can kind of rob us of, as I say, that all the things that should be coming to us when we become overly emotional, when our emotions get the better of us, negative emotions. And then think about how drugs tie into emotions and pull our strings in a way that's even worse. In the beginning, you might say, "Well, I love my strings being pulled in this way. It's awesome. I'm floating, I'm flying." But then later on, who's in control? And that same equation where drugs control you, and it's like, I love this feeling. I think one's got to contemplate in terms of your own personal life. Who is behind the steering wheel? You or your emotions? Who needs to be more behind the steering wheel? You or your emotions? Are you too emotionally repressed, or are you not emotionally repressed enough? And it's questions you can keep asking yourself. And I think it's a question that applies to Gabby and Brian. Were they too emotional? Were they not emotional enough? What do you think the answer is to that? So I think using substances may seem to be the way we handle our emotions. I think in the beginning, you might say, when you're nervous, you have a drink and then you feel better. If you're anxious, you take this or that pill and then you have a better handle on your emotions or your anxiety. But the opposite can also be true. Instead of handling your emotions, learning to handle your emotions, learning what your emotions are, you may lose the ability to do that because you're deferring to something else, right? A chemical or something. And so while that's clearly a way of dealing with emotions, I would argue that it's a way to avoid figuring out the wiring of our heartstrings, right? Think about an Olympic athlete, one that is destined to get a gold medal. He's got to, at the same time, control his emotions, control his anxiety, that he doesn't feel tired and feel exhausted by the stress of what he's got to do, the challenge and the expectation, and the necessity, the urgency to perform almost perfectly, right? He's got to control that, but at the same time, he's got to allow feelings to inspire him and get excited and get the heart beating and get those dreams bubbling and the fireworks going. So it's that magic place between being challenged by stress, but also being able to translate those sometimes negative feelings into something that's positive and realistic and attainable, right? And that takes a lot of practice. That is something that is the undoing of so many athletes and so many people, and that you only learn to do with practice, kind of thing. So I would argue that you need to learn how to you need to figure out the wiring of your own heartstrings, and you can't learn that by reading a self-help book. You can't learn that by asking a shrink. You can't learn that by asking a family member or somebody who knows you really, really, really well. It's something you've got to navigate yourself. It's something you only learn through the trial and error of being alive, having the experience of being alive and making mistakes and all that kind of thing. So, so I think one of the ways that you practice this idea, and again, think about it in terms of Gabby and Brian. If you could have been like a guardian angel and said to them, this is what you need to do to navigate this period of your life and succeed, right? What tools would this guardian angel give them? Well, one of them is, you could say, how about get emotional out of context, right? What that means is you're not necessarily emotionally up, but emotionally down on purpose, right? So in other words, you go into sort of dark places, such as this one. You don't only go there when something bad happens. You think about that when things are actually going perhaps well, right? In other words, you get emotional out of context, not just when it's always in context, right? And not necessarily always that you're trying to get emotionally up. You try and sort of rise emotionally, feel happy. You can also get emotional out of context and be emotionally down on purpose, and then find your perspective in that way where you get emotional out of context, right? Does that make sense? And that is how you can find perspective on negative emotions instead of being in context and overwhelmed by it, right? Um, remember, remember, you need to contextualize your past in your universe. You need to know where to put the past. The past isn't past; it's still kind of happening. The past isn't something that's irrelevant. It's always relevant. The past is this expanding burden, but it can also be an expanding rocket ship under you, getting you where you need to go. So you've got to remember the place of your past, and you only do that when you get emotional out of context. But you've also got to think about the past in terms of the context of the changing present. How are you managing the present? Are you doing that effectively? And then also in the context of a shifting future. Now think about Gabby and Brian in that construct. What do they do with the past? What do they do with the Moab incident? What do they do with what happened in July? And we're going to get to that. What do they do with what is happening to them? Well, first of all, they've got to make the past relevant, but they've got to decide how relevant to make it. And they've got to decide that relevance in terms of the context of the changing present. Is the present changing? And one way to think about that is if you look at the Facebook posts from, where is it? So not Facebook posts, the Instagram posts. Something happened between these 13 Instagram posts up until that one. Something happened between these 13 and these last 4. Something happened in the present where the past was happening to the present, and was it happening in a good way or a bad way? Did the present need to be confronted, adapted, altered, or did the past need to be thought of in a different way? And then how was what is happening then and there affecting their futures? And the answer is well, the past, something was wrong in Brian's past, something was wrong in Brian's present in terms of Gabby's presence, present and her social media, and something was happening that was going to totally disrupt and destroy both of their futures. Were they able to see that within the context that they were in? So I think a way to properly pay tribute to Gabby is to remember her through her 13 Instagrams 1 year ago this month, 13 Instagrams in July compared to just 4 in August. And I think, obviously, when I say 13 Instagrams, within each Instagram, sometimes there are 5 images or 8 images, sometimes there's video as well. But the reason why I want us to look at this is it's July 2022 right now, and we want to look back a year later, and we want to look at this young woman trying to live her life, and we know what the result was, and look at it in terms of appreciating her life, appreciating now a year later what we know was going to happen, but also appreciating the cruelty of the silence and everything that has lasted until this time. And you've got to kind of wonder, how can one in a way live better? How can one avoid these situations? And I think the answer was how you deal with the past, how the past deals with the present, and how you redirect your future. You've got to start anticipating that things are happening and building up, and then take action, right? So before I continue, I just want to look at some of your comments here. Tommy Coyote says, do you think you can be a killer like Brian? I think all of us are capable of that. I think it's a no-brainer, actually. You just add the right amounts of stress, and anyway, everyone's got their breaking point. Just see some comments here that really shouldn't be here. I'm just trying to get rid of it. I sort of wonder whether some people come here to try to have your channel either demonetized or taken down. So I'm just trying to look for a comment that I need to get rid of. Sunflowers, I'm glad you're happy about the 2 lives. Okay, well, I can't find the comment that I'm trying to get rid of, so I'm going to actually have to block the person who left it, just because it doesn't give me any other option. So sorry about that, but if you're going to leave comments like that, well, then that's the situation. Okay. No, it was a comment that's just totally uncalled for. Okay, so I'm going to take you through these social media posts, these Instagrams, starting from this one, right? And that is this one. And what she says here is, there's no place like the tiny home we built, bizarre design, #van life. See if I can make it a bit bigger. So that's the first image she puts up in July. Can you guys see that? Let's make it a bit bigger. And can I make it even bigger than that? Okay. So there you have Gabby in a sort of a, it's quite interesting. There's a bird flying over there. I don't know if that was intentional. You have Gabby in a, standing in this sort of, what do you call it, cleft in a rock. And, you know, the rock is this really hard wall, and the wind makes a way through it. The wind sort of creates a crack, even almost like a womb through the rock. And Gabby's standing there on her toes, right? And there is something almost magical about this hard mountain giving way to air, and Gabby stepping into that specific space, taking a cue from nature, to find a way through the hardship of life, kind of thing. And that's the first image from July 5th. Here's another one. There's another bird flying in the air. I don't know whether it's swallows. These look like they could be swallows' nests. There's looks like another one. And then this is the third one. And so in this particular set of images, Brian doesn't feature at all. Brian obviously took these photos, right? And now we go to number 2. And this is, I think she chose this because it's the sort of thing you see on her arm over there. It's a sort of art that she would appreciate, right? And this was taken in Colorado Springs. And again, a nice picture of Gabby there. And a nice picture of her there. You can actually see the tattoo on her arm quite well. And then there's almost like a sense of humor here. A little pot from Colorado. What do you think that's a reference to? I think altogether I've found 2 or 3 references to marijuana in their social media. It's not like one, it's quite a few. And obviously, that's done with a little bit of tongue in cheek, wouldn't you say? Okay, so that is from July 8th. So you've got essentially 3 days that pass between these posts. So we're trying to look for like a pattern, right? The next post is July 10th, right? So just 2 days later. So it's quite regular. This is taken from the Great Sand Dunes National Park. And here she provides quite a long statement. She says, after going on our first road trip across the country in my tiny car, that's the Nissan, we felt like there was just so much we missed. Turning this Ford Transit essentially into a camper was such an adventure in itself, but I couldn't love the way it turned out more. All the places it's brought us so far have been amazing. So here she is, July 10th, 1 month before the Moab incident, saying things couldn't be better, right? Just shows you how at the moment that you are at your happiest, real life can kind of start sneaking up on you, right? So right here, she says, I couldn't love the way it turned out more. All the places it's brought us so far have been amazing. As soon as we got to the Great Sand Dunes, I didn't want to leave. There was so much to hike. But as soon as the campsite on the dunes open up for summer, they fill up instantly, along with the overnight parking permits. Lucky enough, I called at the right time when someone cancelled and was able to score up a campsite for 2 nights overlooking the dunes. I'm so grateful we got such an awesome spot to spend the night and surf the dunes. And the night sky here was insane. Never seen so many stars. So, yeah, she's really effusive. She's really happy. The trip couldn't be going better. She's feeling like the universe is smiling on them. Everything is going according to plan. Everything is great, right? Okay, so now we go to number 4. And this is just the same thing. And I don't know if you remember, Brian's Instagram had pretty much the same image, but just with Brian in it. So this is number 4, and this is really the same day, right? And she just says, Bikini Bottom isn't the only place there's sandy cheeks, right? And then she says, swipe to see me fall on my butt. So yeah, you can see Gabby's kind of in a good mood. She's making jokes. She's got this sort of cheeky sense of humor, and look at the spectacular series of images. So you look at the sky as well, and she really does look like America's daughter here. She really looks young and like she's having fun and doesn't have a care in the world and all that kind of thing. And I must say, this particular image, I think Brian captured a good sense of perspective, with the path going there. You can see Brian does have a kind of an eye for photography. And then this is a video, but I'm going to have to play it on my phone for you guys to see it. And what's quite interesting with that particular video is it comes with music, and I think the music really gives you a sense of what was really going on. When you just see the static frozen screenshot of a moment, it may not feel like it was really happening. When you actually see Gabby moving, you realize all of this really did happen. Oh no, is it not showing? Can you hear the music? Can you guys hear the music? Okay, good. Terry Dean says sounds like dental office music. I don't know, to me it sounds like the perfect music for the setting. It sounds casual, it sounds carefree, it sounds happy. Okay, so Masha, I can listen to that quite a few times and sort of watch it as well. If you guys want to go do it on your own time, this is Gabby Petita on Instagram. There's the link. But the point is, that you've got to look at some of these videos and you get a real sense of movement and that their lives are happening, right? And I don't know, I find it quite touching. I find it quite romantic. I find it quite cute, quite quaint, quite sweet, right? And of course, I do notice there's a bit of a similarity here between Gabby and Brian going somewhere and things not ending happily ever after. And that was not that long after Chris Watts and Nicole Kessinger came in. One wonders, did Gabby and Brian see that? Or is it just coincidence? Sunflower says, my heart is breaking all over again for Gabby. Now, I've got to say, when I put all of this together, right, I found it very moving. Even though I've gone through it dozens of times, I found it very moving, and that's what I wanted to sort of share with you guys. I wanted to bring her back to life and to sort of revisit this moment that her mother is talking about, and find some meaning in it, right? Bridget says she's out of touch with reality, unfortunately, doesn't know who she's trusting. Yeah, and I mean, haven't we all been there before? Are we in touch with reality? Are we trusting someone realistically? Are they trusting us realistically? It doesn't have to end in death. It can end in disaster. It can end in a mess, or it can simply end. But the question is, um, are we in touch with reality? Or is someone else in touch with theirs? Right? So yeah, she actually falls while she's sandboarding, and then there's this also this image looking back at the sand. And I must say, I didn't really think about it when I put up this particular image, but the image I chose to express the heroism of life has got a sand dune in it, right? And here she is with the sand dune behind her, all of this vast sort of sandscape behind her. And again, in this moment in time in her life, Gabby felt like a hero. She felt like, I'm living my life. I have the life that I want. This is what I want, right? And in that sense of sort of insignificance is a sense of significance, right? And she'd found it. And that is why it's so sort of crushing that just like a month later, it was lost and lost forever. Kathy, thanks very much. Look how carefree she seems there, right? Again, Brian took all of these photos, and there's nothing of Brian here. So far, we haven't seen Brian yet. And so you've got to wonder what is happening in July that spills over into August that Brian's not very happy about. And bear in mind, Brian is taking all of these pictures. And when Gabby puts these pictures onto Instagram, is she getting, what sort of reaction is she getting? And bear in mind the poll. What sort of impact did Gabby's social media have on Brian? Answer, none. Small impact, medium impact. 86% of you say it was either a medium or a huge impact. That's quite a lot, right? And I tend to agree. I think it had a huge impact. I agree with the majority of you that I think her social media had a big impact, which is exactly why her social media suddenly drops down to just these 4 posts in August, right? From 13 to 4, I mean, it's almost dropped by a third. And you had the same thing taking place with Chris Watts and Shanann Watts, where they were supposed to be so happy, and at the end of her life, Shanann posted very, very little social media. That says something in itself, right? That says something in itself. Ricardo Ortiz is sandboarding. Never heard of that. Never heard of that? Yeah, Kathy, it did cause a lot of accidents. Okay, so let's go back to, so we're just going to go through the end of the sandboarding ones. And now we go to number 5. So remember the previous Instagram was from July 10th. This is July 11th, right? So again, the frequency is still quite frequent, right? And here she says, last day in Colorado, Utah, van life, nomad living, the right to explore, van life movement. And then a couple of days go by, July 17th. So 6 days go by. And this to me is one of the most beautiful pictures of Gabby. It's just a very sunny picture, right? The proportions, they're also quite nice. And this is obviously also used, we've seen this picture quite a lot used in the media. This was taken at Zion National Park on July 17th. And yes, she writes, on mountain time, the past 2 nights camping in Zion have been so cool, literally. We hiked up here in about 100 degrees, and it was so nice coming back to our campsite, watching the sky full with dark clouds and view the lightning storm in the nice cool air of the light rain. Now, she doesn't say it here, but she does say later that almost every day that they camped, it rained, and that couldn't have been a lot of fun. I mean, camping in the rain gets old, right? Anyway, so that's one image from that day. This is an image that I think is, I don't know if everyone has seen this picture. Have you seen this picture before? What I really like about this image is I don't know, there's something quite magical about it, the way the sunbeam sort of slides across it. I don't know, it's just, it's quite a nice put together image. Is there anyone here who hasn't seen that particular image? Someone's goat says, it's sad how Gabby's Instagram has so many followers that she never got to see or experience. Yeah, same with her YouTube. Yeah, camping in the rain with dirty feet, clothing gets dirty, everything gets dirty. Yeah. Margaret Zabinski says, first time seeing this pic. So here's another image from that same sort of thing. You can see she's wearing the same shirt. And although they're in Zion National Park, she's also wearing a T-shirt saying Zion Outdoors. And then this is the 7th, so we're about halfway through all of the July Instagrams. This is still Zion National Park. She says, brought a small piece of home to the canyons. Van life, expedition happiness, nomad life, the right to explore. So I don't know what she means by a small piece of home. What is the small piece of home here? Is it, what could be the small piece of home? Is it the tent? So yeah, you can see how important art is to them, and there's a sort of Van Gogh-y interpretation of Zion, right? A Starry Night sort of interpretation. That looks like Gabby's diary or journal. And then there's another image. You can see she's wearing the same shirt here as there, right? This was taken July 17th or posted July 17th. This was posted the very next day. So still, you can see it's quite frequent Instagrams. And still, Brian, you still haven't seen Brian yet. And it's almost 3/4 of the way through July, right? Now we are at the 19th of July, and it's still Zion National Park. And here she actually refers to Brian right in the beginning, and there's almost like nothing else here. She just says at Bizarre Design, and then there's like nothing else. And then she says, do what you love, USA road trip, and so on. But yeah, she's explicitly acknowledging Brian right in her description here. There you see her, and there they are together for the first time. but it's quite late. It's 3/4 of the way through the month. And I don't know whether he's lifting his toe here and she's lifting her foot as if to say, hey, we're walking barefoot, check it out. But I do think this particular image of Gabby and Brian, they almost look like a cute, compatible couple. They look like they suit each other in this particular image. If you didn't know the context, you would have imagined that they suit each other, wouldn't you? So again, if you just look at these images, there's Gabby, one picture of her and Brian. See, she's wearing the same shirt and shorts. There again, and there again. And Brian just appears in the one. And he's probably counting, and he's probably aware of that. So of these 5 images, Brian appears in one of them. And he may also be conscious, this is the title image that she chooses. This is the image that actually appears on Instagram. So if you go to there, that is the image that she's chosen as the title image, right? She doesn't choose that as the title image, and he's probably aware of that and thinking about that, right? Again, if social media is a big issue to him, and I think it was, if it was a big issue, he's going to be thinking, if I look at Gabby's Instagram, just the title images, so this is July. No Brian, 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 and this is the end of July. And then August, that fateful, horrible, fateful month, guess what? There's Brian on the first image of August. Isn't that there for a reason? Isn't Brian there on this title image for a reason? Because he wasn't there anywhere else in July. Do you guys see that? Sharon Tux is such amazing photography, though. Yeah, I mean, it's visually quite stunning, isn't it? Tommy says, Nick's helping me work through some things, but he doesn't know it. Well, now I do. Okay, so now we get to this particular image, which I think is really, I think this is possibly the most beautiful photo taken of Gabby. Just the whole thing. She's just really a nice photo. Says Zion National Park. In a way, she's unrecognizable here. She looks 2 or 3 years older than she looks, for example, there, right? And she writes here, Bryce Canyon National Park, such a beautiful drive here. After the rain, the canyons are visibly a deeper orange. And then all of these hashtags. Okay, and that brings us to the 10th Instagram, and this one is from July 22nd. So this is the same day that Gabby's mother put up this tweet, right? And yes, she says, every night we have camped so far inside any national park, it's rained. Now you can imagine that this could actually cause stress. In the beginning, you might say, that's nice, I'm enjoying it. But it can also be stressful. It can be stressful if you are in a tent and it's raining and you need to sort of take a leak or something, and then you go out, you get wet, you bring the mud inside the tent, and someone's not happy. And you know that Brian wasn't very good at keeping his feet clean and keeping himself clean. And you can imagine every night that they've camped, that would start agitating Gabby, right? A situation like that. Okay, so that's another familiar picture we've seen. So here, once again, Brian makes an appearance, but Gabby doesn't put him on the sort of cover. That is the cover picture that she chooses, just herself, right? How does Brian feel about that? And so here is another video. Let me bring that up as well. This video kind of brings up the sort of camp vibe in a way that I think is quite cool. Again, listen to the music. Sorry to hear that, Sharon. So Jody says maybe guys started hitting on her thinking she's single. You know, you could have had that. You could also have had people saying, "Who's that dork?" You know, you could have had some pretty mean comments coming his way. We know that Gabby had friends at school that didn't approve of Brian, and were they following her on Instagram? Jen H says, Nick, are you going to write a book on the Gabby Petito case? That would be awesome. Answer, no. I will tell you that I've thought about a title or two, and it was interesting chatting to Kathleen Hale. Make sure you watch that if you haven't watched it. But Kathleen Hale is writing a book, and I think she's going to do a great job. She's already started that book, so I think that is going to be a well executed book. So look out for that. Uh, Jen H, I'm hoping not to write another book for at least another 8 years. I'm hoping not to write a book until 2030. So that's my goal. We'll see what happens after that. Sorry if that's disappointing, but I have written 101 books. So anyway, there you see Gabby preparing a meal. I was kind of looking at her fingers. You know, is that an engagement ring? Is she wearing some kind of ring on her finger? Is Brian wearing a ring on his finger? I don't know if you can really see in this image. I suppose he's not. Does that mean anything? Anyway, so we go from the uh, have I shown you guys that one? This is just a moment where Brian is strumming. Oh yeah, so you don't really hear it. Anyway, so this is Brian in the camp, and he seems very laid back. He seems very relaxed. But what do you think can intrude on that atmosphere? What do you think can kind of come into that situation and mess up the calmness? Well, the answer is social media. Someone not being sort of not someone who's there, but they are concentrating on something else. That's one way. But another one is you in that situation, and then you look on your phone, and suddenly you're back to some other world that is judging you in a certain way that's maybe not very nice, or evaluating your fiance in a way that's not very nice as well, or your fiance bear in mind it's your fiance is not really acknowledging you in her own social media, and it's like, wow, aren't we sort of equals? Don't you love me? And yet you seem to be hiding me away. What's that all about, right? I mean, if you think about yourself on honeymoon, would there just be photos of you? Would you just put photos of yourself on honeymoon, or would you have lots of photos of you and the person that you're with? Tommy says being on the phone and being unavailable. Yeah. Bridget says, Nick, do you think Brian told her to just put herself? Maybe he wasn't comfortable with the exposure. No, I don't. I think that he would have wanted control over her being on social media all the time. I think he would have wanted to show she's mine on social media. So I don't think that was really the case. What I mean is he probably didn't want her or himself on social media, but if she was going to put herself on social media, then he wanted to say, hey, she's with me. That makes sense. So now we go from July 22nd. There he is walking, got this sort of weird way of walking. I don't know if you remember, one of the TikTokers said that, didn't she mention that Brian had this odd way of walking? He seemed a bit of an odd guy just from that. Yvonne says, my hubby hates to be in pictures, and when I post in real time, I've had to compromise a lot about it. Okay. Okay, so now we at number 11. Now, this is at the Mystic Hot Springs, and it's from July 26th. Again, bear in mind, it's just 4 days after that Instagram post. So she's just posting quite regularly, every 3 or 4 days, and each time 4 or 5 images, right? And she says, I took a very relaxing nap here. And then she says, Zen meditation, van life. It's quite interesting that Gabby actually mentions yoga in her profile, art, yoga, and veggies. So yoga is part of whatever she thinks is quite important. So anyway, there she is in this situation. And again, there are quite a few photos here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And there's one photo of her and Brian, and she doesn't choose to put that photo as the cover photo. So Brian must have been thinking, out of a lot of these sets of photos, you could have put us as the title photo. Why didn't you? Why is it just about you? Why is it just you in the landscape kind of thing, right? And I must say, this image kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies just because of the way he's holding her. I don't know, just kind of a weirdish photo. This is also the photo one of the rare photos where you could see that it says "Let It Be" on her arm, and that's another one of the really sort of tragic ironies of this whole story, is Gabby's philosophy of "Let It Be," and you kind of get the feeling Brian just couldn't let it be, whatever it was, you know. So once again, here there appears to be a lack of tension. It appears to be two people that are enjoying themselves, two people that are, in a good place, right? So yeah, we go there. You can see it quite clearly. Let it be. Now we go from the 26th to the 30th. So 4 days later. And here's quite a long description from Gabby. But once again, have a look at these photos. There are 3 photos. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's not really the set that I'm referring to. Anyway, I'll get to that in the next set. Um, anyway, here are three photos. I think Kathleen Hale was saying here that probably you can see here Gabby is actually barefoot, right? Um, you can imagine that it was quite hot to be walking around on bare rock in the middle of summer, barefoot. And I think that was quite astute from Kathleen to pick that up. But it is actually mentioned here in the description. She writes island in the sky. Then she refers to bizarre design, and she says bizarre design hikes barefoot everywhere we go. If it were up to him, he wouldn't own any shoes. But I just find it funny how many people comment on the fact that he is barefoot. As soon as we reached the end of this easy walk, I kicked off my Sanuk, and this woman who seemed very concerned asked me if the crust was hot. I was in such a different mindset that this question fazed me. So I don't know what she means by mindset. I don't know if she was um, smoking something or just kind of in her own little world. But it's quite strange that she feels in a way quite superior to the people around her. And Brian seems as well. She says, even if it was boiling lava, I was just so happy to be there that I didn't think about the sun. Surprisingly enough, and this I think shows the sort of immaturity that is sort of going on. I think we were all like that, where people make comments and you take great exception to it, or you find them very silly or whatever. But you kind of get a sense that um, there's a bit of self-importance here from Gabby, where she's like, "Wow, I can't believe this person asked me if my feet were warm. Even if it was like boiling lava, it wouldn't have mattered." She's trying to assert her, um, I don't know, mastery of the environment, which I think she sort of gets from Brian, that they are hiking experts or something, right? She brings that up in a later post as well. And I think that shows to some extent a being out of touch with reality, not just Brian, but Gabby as well. And I think that's why they got along quite well, because they were to some extent both out of touch with reality. And I think the Moab incident also shows that. I think during the Moab incident, Gabby's very emotional. Gabby really wants the van life journey to continue no matter what. But it's like, cheapest, do you realize someone has called 911? Do you realize what's happening, right? And I don't mean to be nasty or to judge Gabby or Brian when I talk about being out of touch with reality. The idea is to say, in this instance, someone was out of touch with reality. How about you? Are you in touch with reality? Can you see that someone's not in touch with reality? Okay, if you can you see that you're not, right? Um, Sharon says, that is my favorite pic of Gabby. Do you mean this one? Yeah, so I don't know whether it is stoned. I don't know if she's a free spirit, maybe it's a combination. Anyway, she says, I just found this particular narrative a little bit surprising. It's kind of, it shows a kind of a different side to Gabby in a way. She says, um, the sandy smooth crust doesn't retain any heat. So not only did it feel good because it was 100 degrees with no shade. So it's quite weird. She's like saying it's extremely hot. It's 100 degrees with no shade, but somehow the rocks they're walking on are actually cool, right? She says it was tranquil. We always love surpassing people on our hikes, hearing them say things like, whoa, look, he's barefoot. So there's a kind of a arrogance there, maybe a cheeky arrogance going on. If you think about what is going to happen just 1 month later, you realize that arrogance was a bit misplaced. And that's why I say you've got to contextualize yourself in terms of the past, the present, and the future? Is your reality appropriate? And if things are going south, does it need readjustment? So again, this is a big deal being made about being barefoot and how awesome that is. And Kathleen Hale, I think, does quite a good job to highlight that they're trying quite hard in quite weird ways to assert their preeminence compared to the people around them. Then there's another reference to bizarre design inspires me every day on living a more natural lifestyle. Building my feet up so I don't have to bring my shoes in case. Hashtag walk barefoot. Now, doesn't this feel like an odd post by Gabby? It sort of feels a bit weird. And isn't the reason that it feels weird because Brian has been putting pressure on her? And so she's trying to think, how can I bring Brian into my story? And so that is how she does it. But doesn't it feel a little bit forced? Doesn't it feel a bit different to all the other Instagrams? And I think the reason is because Brian is intruding into his story saying, what about me? And so this is the way that she answered, what about me? Does that make sense? Robbie Robin, thanks very much. Kindness Cake says, perhaps they tried too hard to live the dream. Thanks, Robbie Robin. But does that make sense? Doesn't this particular post at the end of July, bear in mind it's July 30th, doesn't it feel like you're starting to feel Brian, the shadow of Brian, the insecurity of Brian is starting to lean in to Gabby's social media, and this is how it kind of comes across, right? So this is the 12th image, the 12th Instagram, and then this is the very last set from July. Now, if you take the next one, there you see Brian kissing Gabby, but it's still really small. So Brian may still have felt, well, you are putting me in the picture, but why am I so reduced? Why am I kind of minimized? I want to be front and center. Well, then there's another, Brian makes another appearance as the second last post, and you see Brian, just like a fragment of Brian. How does he feel about that, right? And this is, I think, where Brian did look at her Instagrams and feel like, I don't feel like I'm not getting the importance that I should be getting as a fiance. And that's going to be expressed probably in a lot of negative ways between them, right? He's wondering, how do you really feel about me? Why are you not proud of me? What's going on? Joan Jensen, thanks a lot for that, Joan. Kelly Marie says she's looking out to the canyon thinking, how the heck can I send him home? I don't know if that's true, Kelly. She was very anxious, and after the Moab incident, she was like, please don't send Brian away. I need him, I need him to drive the van, kind of thing. Yeah. Pauline says she may have thought this adventure could turn into money for both of them, but he had money, his parents' money. So, yeah, I do think she was thinking in a more rational way about what this was all for, whereas I think Brian was just thinking in a very almost reptilian way, like, how does this reflect on me? He's not thinking about it in a way beyond that. On the other hand, Brian may have been thinking, I don't really care whether this works or not. I care about my relationship with her, right? That may have been his thinking. What's the other side to it? So I had a thought. It's just quite late here. It's almost 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I mean, if oh, the other thing is, Brian may have looked at the Instagrams and the YouTube video, and he may have said, "This is pathetic. There's no way you're going to make money out of this." And he may have kind of had a point, right? What I mean is, Gabby was trying to do some work, and I think his job should have been to support her, but he may have sort of been looking at her Instagrams and seeing, well, this post got 10 likes and one comment. Well, how are we ever going to buy fuel from something like that? Right? And he may have been right in that sense. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm not saying that I agree with that. I think you need a while for social media to gain traction. You need to keep at it. And I think Brian was by far the wrong person to be an influencer, right? But maybe they could have had that conversation before they went onto the road. On the other hand, maybe once they were on the road, neither of them could anticipate that people would, and maybe these people deleted their comments, that people would say, well, Gabby, you look beautiful, and then no one says anything about Brian. And then that starts becoming a dark energy for Brian. That starts becoming an issue. Robbie Robbins says he did not have faith in her. Ale Granada says, first time catching a live stream. Yay, long time subscriber, happy to be here. Hello to all. Sorry to say this, but we're almost at the end of this live stream. I actually thought it was going to be half an hour. But anyway, so let's go to the very last set of images. And they are these. So this is the 13th Instagram. And she doesn't write very much here. She just says Mesa Arch Canyon Lands. And it was posted on the very last day of July. So I just want to go to the 24th. So this was posted almost a year ago today. That was posted 2 days ago, a year ago today. So this is in the future a year ago, and this is right at the end of the month. These images are right at the end of the month. I've got to tell you, I've been watching some of the news in America, and apparently right now, America's cooking. It's really, really hot. There are big fires in Yosemite. There are big fires in California, I think. So, you can kind of imagine the heat that you're experiencing now. Well, they were experiencing as well. We know it is very hot during the Moab incident as well. Anyway, so she doesn't say much here. She just says Mesa Arch Canyon Lands. And although this is the next day, she's wearing the same thing that she's got on over here. So you kind of wonder whether she put up these three images and she's saying basically Brian hikes and he's awesome, but she doesn't actually put up a picture of Brian, right? And then the next day, again, look, she's wearing the same clothing, the same shorts, the same shirt. The next day, the 31st, she puts up these 1, 2, 3 images. And here she puts Brian into the picture, right? And I've always found this picture quite interesting, the way that she's completely leaning away from him. It's just her leg that's sort of touching his. And again, notice the bare feet, right? She's got her one foot in the air, and he's kind of got that foot sort of in the air as well. Is the rock really not that hot? Is it really that practical and that wise to be hiking around without shoes on? And so once again, with these just three images, they're just three images here, Gabby chooses not to put this picture of them as a couple onto her Instagram. She instead puts that picture there. Now, I think it could be that Gabby isn't thinking about that, but it could also be that she is. I would imagine that she is. I don't know what you guys think. I would imagine that she is thinking, what's the best title image here? And I think Brian's also thinking that, and he's not liking the answer. And then that is the end of July, and then they're just four Instagrams after that, and then that is the end. So do you get a sense from looking at these pictures just again of the size and the scope of their adventure, and that it was quite beautiful and quite a powerful and big adventure that they were having, right? Only for it to all end, right? And then that brings us back to this tweet from a mother. What separates our respect for life from our violent potentials? Do you know what the answer is? Our anxiety, our ability to control our anxiety, our ability to control, at the end of the day, our emotions, right? What is the main difference between 20-year-old you, 30-year-old you, 40-year-old you, 50-year-old you? What is the difference between an immature person and a mature person? It tends to be your ability to control yourself, your ability to know yourself, but in a very primary sense, your ability to take kind of a handle, a grip on your emotions, right? Kindness Cake, thanks very much for that. Kelly Marie says, I'm almost 49, boy, to regret letting him control me like that. Yuck, thank goodness we grow up. Yeah, one of the things we're supposed to do is learn from our mistakes. And what are our mistakes? Well, where we let our emotions guide us too much, or where we don't let our emotions guide us enough, right? Okay, so wow, hour and a half. I really thought this would be done and dusted a lot sooner, but I hope you guys have found this worthwhile. I hope you've found it interesting. I did think it was important to go through 1 month of Gabby's Instagrams on the 1 year anniversary just to remember her, but within the context of her mother remembering her through this particular message. So I hope you found it meaningful and something that is going to be helpful and of use to you guys. Sharon Tuck, thanks very much for that. Sharon in Canada, thanks very much. Okay, so I'm not going to take it further than that. Thanks, guys, for making it. Although there's still quite a few of you in chat, I need to toggle off to bed. Pauline says, very important and relevant, great live. That's what I try and do with my true crime analysis. I try and make it, it's not supposed to be gratuitous. It's supposed to be taking what we know about these people and bringing it back to ourselves. What do we learn through this cautionary tale? What do we learn about these people? What do we learn about our society, our culture right now? How do we need to change? How do we need to update ourselves? What is going on? What is reality? Right? That's the question we keep asking. And I think you'll agree that a year on, we know the Petito case a lot better than we did 2, 3, 4 months into the Petito case. And that's true of everything. I want to just say to you guys who've stuck by me to the end of this live. So as a little reward, I'm giving you a little bit of an insight into what I'm going to be doing probably this week. Is I watched the movie Elvis over the weekend, and I just started investigating Colonel, is it Tom Parker? And so I just was quite curious, and I spent quite a lot of time reading up about it. And so I'm going to be taking a little bit of a sidetrack off my usual true crime coverage. I'm going to be dealing with Elvis's death and the circumstances surrounding that, which I think are going to blow your socks off. It's a really, really interesting story, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. So that'll be coming up in the following week. So look out for that. If you're interested in Elvis, if you've watched the movie, this is definitely something that's going to shift your knowledge base, I think, quite substantially, and I think you're going to find it very interesting. It's the same kind of meaningful conversation that we've had on Gabby Petito, but on somebody else. I'm just kind of in that place where I want to address that. I think I'm also in that place where I'm thinking these thoughts as well. Margaret Sabinski, thank you very much. Gathering Place says, yes, I also saw that movie, Elvis. So Gathering Place, we need to see you here. Good. So it's really good to see such a lot of interest. Karen Sanderson says, awesome. Sounds fabulous. Sounds good. So good to see a lot of enthusiasm. So I've already started thinking about it, analyzing it, researching it, putting things together. I just need a day or two just to begin sort of that process of scripting the things, and we'll probably do 2 or 3 episodes slash lives, and it should be really, really interesting. So look out for that. Terry says, did you see that a young actress from Elvis passed away? I didn't see that. Sagedi Norna says, I will enjoy hearing your thoughts on Elvis. Sounds good. Well, Sharon says, I've been to Graceland. Okay. Well, Sharon, then you've got no excuse for missing this. This is going to be definitely quite interesting. Gathering Place, that is true. Definitely true. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to sharing this particular story with you guys. It's sort of, as you start uncovering it, more and more comes out. So it's really quite interesting. Okay, thanks a lot, guys, for being here. Take care. Stay cool, stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks a lot for the super chats. Thanks for the Modzo here, Sharon Tuck, and then also members and subscribers. See you guys next time. Okay, all the best.